How's it going, everybody? This is the Week 6 Weekend Fantasy Football Recap right here on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Al_Smizzle. I am Al. If you don't know who I am already, I don't know what to tell you, but thank you for finding this video and watching it. I appreciate it. Every Monday, I look back at what I got right and what I got wrong in my Best Buys article on ESPN, and we take a look at whether when we were wrong, were we unlucky? Like, was the volume there? Did the guy get opportunities? Did he drop a touchdown pass? Did some random stuff happen? Or was the process just off and there were things that we could have done better or places that we should have been that we weren't? So let's get right into that. We're going to go look at the Best Buys column, which is right over here. And they didn't use one of my videos this week. They used Matthew Berry, the great Matthew Berry, to top my article. He was talking about Ryan Griffin, so it did fit. So every week I do this article. It's an ESPN Insider piece. You can become an insider if you want to read it. It's expired now, obviously, because there's no actionable information. So I break it down for you guys every single week. And let's start at the top. Drew Brees was my high-dollar quarterback that I wanted to pay for. He was extremely popular in cash games and GPPs yesterday. And the Saints kind of did what we thought they would do. They scored over 50 points. Drew Brees only had 186 passing yards with 2 TDs and 2 interceptions, ending up with 13.5 DraftKings points. What? They scored 50 points at home, and Drew Brees had 186 yards. Excuse me, what? How did that happen? How is that even possible? Still had 2 touchdowns. The defense went absolutely crazy. Scored 3 touchdowns. That might have held it down, obviously. Just a weird week from Brees. I still think it was the right play from a process perspective. I think we just got unlucky with his total in a game that had like 80-plus points in it. Deshaun Watson did well once again. 17 passes completed out of 29 attempts. Still, only 17 completions in a week is just strange for a quarterback who is throwing as many touchdowns and scoring as many fantasy points as he is. 225 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception with 24.3 DraftKings points. The third one that I put down, the super cheap Kevin Hogan, obviously disappointed, but didn't miss by much, and this is what we talk about every week, right? We needed 14 fantasy points from him to reach value. He was horrific with throwing interceptions, had 3 of them, 1 touchdown, 140 yards passing, 10.2 DraftKings points. If he's what you needed to unlock stuff, and we talked throughout the week that there was so much value at running back that you wouldn't need to unlock things and pay down at quarterback a little bit on the Friday question and answer show and Sunday before lock, that you didn't need to pay down but could in tournaments. If you used him in tournaments, yes, he probably kept your score down a little bit, but he didn't kill you in cash games, considering that he was only 5 points off of 4 or 5 points off of where you're really looking for him to get. So tough for those cheap quarterbacks to miss value. He obviously did, but not horrible. Josh McCown, if you went cheap at quarterback, was the way to go, ending the day with 25.3 points. Should have had 29. That's a whole other story. We'll get into that in a little bit. Cover boy on my article this week was definitely Leonard Fournette, and he did exceptionally well. Another 100-yard plus game, 21 carries, 130 and a touchdown, 2 catches on 2 targets for 8 yards. Wasn't really involved in the passing game this week as much as he was. 24.8 DraftKings points. We're going to chalk that up to a win. Devonta Freeman, what the hell, Falcons? What the absolute hell are you thinking? Okay, it's not like we haven't seen the Falcons do this before. It's a different offensive coordinator. We saw this in the Super Bowl. You get up to a massive lead and you stop running the football. They're up 17-0 on the Dolphins at home in the first half of that game. Devonta Freeman, somebody said, oh, what about Devonta Freeman? Can we get a support group for him at halftime? Usually the guys that I write up, if they're doing extremely poorly, I'll do a support group. He had 1 catch. He had like 58 yards in the first half. He got vultured for a touchdown on a drive where they got inside the 10-yard line, mostly because of his rushing. Tevin Coleman ended up running the touchdown in. But he had like 58 yards at halftime in a game that they're up 17. You would expect him to get like 12 to 15 carries in the second half, get over 100 yards, possibly a touchdown late, a couple of other catches. Ends the day with 9 carries. 9 carries for Devonta Freeman in a game you were winning 17-0 at home. 68 yards, no touchdowns, 2 catches on 4 targets for 11 yards, 9.9 DraftKings points. Sure, I can take the L here, I guess. You can say this was bad process. I honestly don't think this one was bad process. I think that 9 carries is an abomination on a day when the game flow was in his favor. and they just went away from it. Sark just sarked it up all over the field. Did not get Devonta Freeman the ball enough at the end of the first half or at all in the second half when things started going, ass backwards for Atlanta. Elijah McGuire, now this was the one that somebody said yesterday on Twitter, and rightfully so. I was like, well, you wrote up Elijah McGuire in your article. Yes, but Friday, and I don't get paid to do an addendum to this article. I could ask them to change it, but I didn't. It's probably my fault. Maybe I'll do that in the future and just send them a new blurb and say, take out Elijah McGuire. But to me, that doesn't fix people that already read the article on Wednesday, Thursday when it comes out to fix it on Sunday morning. We used to have an X Factors piece that would come out on Sunday mornings. I try to do that now right here on the stream on Friday, question and answer. And on Sunday morning, we talked about how Ingram was going to be the other guy that we were going to use here with Jerick McKinnon, were the two best values on the day now that McGuire was off the board for me with Forte being back, as we wrote here in the column. Bilal Powell out and Forte limited practice. Both of them were out. McGuire's the only guy in town. Once he wasn't the only guy in town, I'm no longer interested. So he was off the board for me. Kareem Hunt, 15-point floor, scored 16 fantasy points last week. Again, 9 carries for Kareem Hunt. He had 1.5 points at halftime. He had 4 carries at halftime. It's almost as though Kansas City totally forgot that he was on their team, that they have this weapon that gets over 100 yards from scrimmage as long as you just feed him the ball. He ends the day with 16 fantasy points. Todd Gurley, 16 fantasy points. Jerick McKinnon, 25.9. I'm sure you had him in your cash game lineups. So not bad there at running back. Chris Hogan, this was a mistake looking back at it. Now, was it a mistake because results-wise? To me, it's a mistake because of the volume that he got. I saw his volume going up throughout the season. Obviously, Gronk was out last week, but 8 targets should be enough to expect from him. He got 4. That's a problem for me that he only got 4 targets. But he still could have salvaged that day. There was a pass in the first quarter that Brady threw where he got behind 3 defenders and missed a touchdown there. And there was another one that was thrown into the ground at his feet where he could have had a touchdown there to kind of salvage things at least a little bit, just the way that D-Hop did, saved his day with a touchdown. Didn't exceed value, but it kind of made things a little bit better. Definitely would have patched things up if he caught one of those 2 touchdowns. I'll take the L on Chris Hogan there. That's fine with me. Larry Fitzgerald, 6,800 was the one that we detailed. They hadn't raised his price in 6 weeks, and he keeps getting insane volume, and so we just keep playing him. 10 catches on 11 targets, 138 yards and a touchdown, 31.8 DraftKings points, and the majority of those coming in the first half, so hopefully you had him. Michael Crabtree, the absolute best wide receiver on the Raiders, and it's not even close. 6 catches for 10 yards, 6 catches on 10 targets for 52 yards and a touchdown, 17.2 DraftKings points, more than enough for your cash games, not terrible for tournaments either. Ricardo Lewis disappointed because the Browns passing game disappointed. Taylor Gabriel got carried off the field apparently, not by the medics, but by Kiko Alonso when he caught him in midair on one play. And the touchdown went to a practice squad guy for the Falcons, like early in that game, Hall. Ryan Griffin, the tight ends all did fine. Ryan Griffin proving once again that even though you don't score a touchdown, the volume's going to be there against the Cleveland Browns. Flowchart life for sure. 3 catches on 8 targets. Ryan Griffin got 8 targets. He does not normally see that many targets. He did against the Browns. Offensive coordinators are scheming for their tight ends against the Browns and the Giants. It's something that we're going to see moving forward. It's something we've seen in the past, and they're not stupid. They're going to keep feeding the ball to the weakest point on the offense on the other team, and that is the weakest spot on the defense on the other team for their offense to succeed, and that is tight ends. End of the day with 10.2 DraftKings points for 4K, missed value by 1.5. That's not terrible. Anytime you get double digits out of your tight end for 4K or under, you got to be a little bit happy. Austin Hooper, same idea, 7 catches on 9 targets, 48 yards, no touchdowns, 11.8 DraftKings points. And ASJ, my tournament special, as we saw, get a touchdown called back bogusly. I know that bogusly isn't a word, but I'm creating it right now. 8 catches on 11 targets. The volume continues to be there. 46 yards, 1 touchdown, 17.6 DraftKings points. Baltimore Ravens were my number 1 defense on the day. We got lucky here. We were right and we got lucky. The Bears really didn't throw the ball that much, like 17 times. They ran it a ridiculous amount of times. They still got 4 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, 2 touchdowns that were completely insane to salvage the day with 20 DraftKings points for the Ravens. If you played them, we're going to get to that in a second. Kansas City Chiefs kind of went bust at 4 points total, and the Texans scored a defensive touchdown, so they were fine. That's the recap of the article. Let's get to where is it? I don't have my cash game lineup up. Let me pull that up real quick. And then I can start recapping that for you guys. And you'll see, like, I made mistakes in my cash game lineup on DraftKings this week. And one of them was the morning of. And one of them was a process mistake that I made throughout the week. So this was a problem for me. That it's so thin right now with people getting better, people being smarter, with obviously the service fee, the rate going up, and the pricing, aside from this week being super tight, for the majority of this season, has made it really difficult to make lineups on a week-to-week basis. We've seen the cash game scores be way down. This week they were way up because the chalk hit. This is the 4-man competition that we have for the edge. Went with Drew Brees in cash. I'm fine with that, even though I normally don't pay up at quarterback. 13 points, right? Like, this would have been Drew Brees at 7,200 or Hogan at 4.5. Would have had 2.7 extra K. $2,500 more dollars to spend and had 3 less points. Right? So everybody wants to talk about how Hogan did so poorly, but with as many people having Brees as they did this week in cash because you could afford him because of the cheap running backs, Hogan didn't kill you, is what I was trying to get at throughout the article. Drew Brees having the day he had, that hurt. Leonard Fournette was my number 1 running back on the week. We talked about that all week, 24.8. That was just fine. Jerick McKinnon was here. My 3rd running back, I wanted to get to Hunt because I wasn't thrilled with the expensive wide receivers. So I wanted to go for Hunt, and I ended up not playing Ingram on DraftKings because of his fail rate in the past. He had a tremendous day. I played him in my cash game lineup on FanDuel, and I crushed everything over there. Obviously, I wish I would have had the 2 cheap guys, but as I said, I went for the cheap wide receiver in Crowder, who did poorly. The expensive wide receivers didn't do much better, right? They all had, Julio Jones and them had 10 points more. 10 points more would have been good, but I don't think Crowder was a mistake here. Thielen, Crabtree did just fine. Would have loved to have seen 3 more yards out of Thielen here to get the 100-yard bonus, 1 extra catch, and it's a 5-6 point difference. Zach Miller, somebody I didn't write up, but I needed the extra money. So Zach Miller, again, all the tight ends ended up with 10 to 12 points. Unless you played ASJ, you paid up a little bit at tight end, which is viable considering how much usage he's getting. Kareem Hunt, disappointing at 16 points because they forgot that they had him on their team. Still crushed 100 yards with 5 catches. Falcons D, this was the problem. We talked about this on the Sunday morning show. I was on the Ravens all week long, and that was the route that I was going to go. However, I felt that the Bears weren't going to throw the ball a ton. I felt that Macklin being surprise out was really what changed things for me a lot in the morning, where I said, wow, Macklin's out. The Bears are going to be closer. They're not going to have to throw the ball as much with a rookie quarterback. And that took me off the Ravens and down to the Falcons. And as lucky as we got with the Ravens, that cost me 17 points. Playing Hunt over Ingram ends up costing me, 16 more points. So that's 33 points that I'm missing off of this lineup right there. And then if I come down from Hunt to Ingram, that would push up Crowder to one of the 8K wide receivers, probably DeAndre Hopkins, which would have given me 8.5. I would have gained 3-4 more points. So my cash game lineup was 40 points lower on a 3v3 swap than it really should have been. So that's my mistake, right? And I essentially had more points on FD, a point where your cash game lineup expectation for positivity is 110 to 120. As opposed to 150 plus on DraftKings. You need more points on DraftKings. So if my cash game lineup on the lower scoring side is outscoring my cash game lineup on the higher scoring side, there's a problem. This is a 25th percentile lineup that I put up yesterday, which is unacceptable for me, especially on a day when the chalk was to go cheap, and I didn't. I bucked the trend going with Kareem Hunt, which changed one other thing, and then I made a mistake going from the defense I had all week, going down to the Falcons before we went live with the anti-Tinkercast, based on the new information that we gained with inactives. So I ended up winning 25%. It was just a bloodbath in my cash games this week on DK. Luckily, I won everything on FD, including tournaments and whatever else. But the ASJ touchdown getting overturned cost me a seat over there, which kind of sucked. You're talking about a $25,000 seat equity for there. And this was the lineup. We'll talk about that in a minute. This was the lineup. This is the Millie Maker from yesterday. And people were asking me, because I was kind of going crazy on Twitter, and I try not to do that very often. It's like, oh no, I'm losing here and this sucks. And I don't try to be that guy on Twitter, right? Like it's lame to just, nobody cares about your bad beat stories. But this is how much a bad call can affect you. 4 points here, 7 points here for that touchdown, 7.3 or 7.2 or something like that, right? So you're talking about 11 more points in this lineup. That puts me at 207 points. That wouldn't have won me the Millie Maker. But most of these lineups that ended up near the top have McCown and Safarian Jenkins in them. All those things go up. All the ones in the $444 tournament go up. You look at what won it, 231, and it makes for a different feeling on Saturday. You feel better about your game because at one point I would have been like top 15 in the Millie Maker. Now I got to sweat, and DFS is fun. Wow, this is great. As opposed to when you lose a touchdown from a player that should have been a touchdown by every stretch of the imagination because there's not enough evidence to overturn it. And the thing that I've been going with here is, remember on Thursday night when Cam dove for the end zone and he held it out, but there was no good camera angle. They said he was out on the field, and the video evidence showed no clear-cut evidence to show that he had gotten the ball over inside the pylon before it went out of bounds, so they couldn't overturn it. Same thing with the ASJ. You cannot say that that was a fumble, aside from all the other stuff, like, well, it's a fumble out of the end zone, it's this and that. He had the ball. So that cost me 11 points. It cost me a whole lot of good feelings on the day. The rest of the day, I was just tilted the rest of the weekend, which kind of sucked. Ended up having a good weekend in GPPs, though. I was all over it with like 50% of my allocation being on Ingram and 50% of my allocation being on McKinnon and so much ASJ and yada, 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 that I finished really high in this tournament and really high in a bunch of other tournaments. So I was positive in tournaments on DK, negative in cash games on DK, positive on the week because of my lineups on FD crushing. But it is what it is. Hopefully we can continue doing well as the season goes on. Thank you guys for joining here again today. If you're new to the channel, please click that like button. Please click that subscribe button on YouTube. And if you're here on Twitch, follow and make sure notifications are on. If you want to take part in the chat, be sure that you hit the subscribe button. You can do it for free using your Amazon Prime, linking it to Twitch Prime, getting a sub token and ad-free viewing all over Twitch that you can use for complete ad-free viewing. So thank you for being here once again this week. We're going to get back to it on Friday with the question and answer, and I'll catch up to you guys later. Bye, everybody.